I'm Jono.
And I'm Kendall.
And we are Bike Gearheads.
Today we're talking to you guys about a brand new bike from Santa Cruz. It is the Bronson 5.
Bronson 5. We're already up to the 5th. It's pretty crazy.
Happening fast.
If you want to learn more about this bike, you can click right here.
And if you guys want to skip around in this video, we have chapter timestamps below.
All right, so let's get to it.
So where does the Bronson fit in the Santa Cruz lineup?
So Santa Cruz has a lot of full suspension mountain bikes, actually just mountain bikes in general. If you're curious about that, you can check out our brand visit right here. We went there and toured the factory, learned all about all of their bikes. So we go into depth about that.
I think today we're just going to quickly review the trail bikes. So starting at the lower end of the travel spectrum, we have the Tallboy, which is a 120, 130 bike. It's full 29-inch wheels, and then its counterpart is the 5010, which is mixed wheel and is 130, 140 travel. So moving up the travel spectrum, we have the High Tower, which is going to be a 145, 150 travel bike. It's going to have dual 29-inch wheels. And then we have this bike, the Bronson. So this is going to be 150 in the rear and 160 millimeters in the front. It's going to be mixed wheel only, and it's going to be a pretty aggressive trail bike, I'd say.
Okay. And Santa Cruz is saying it's a good all-arounder for a lot of people, depending where you live, I'm sure. But
yeah, I think if you live in a steeper area, I think this could be an awesome all-arounder that's really going to allow you to ride everything and hang on to quite a bit of efficiency. And then maybe if you live somewhere a little bit more tame, but you really want to push your riding, this is going to really unlock the keys to progression for you, I think.
Or if you like going to take trips to bike parks, you know, it's going to give you that option as well.
Yeah, mostly like to trail ride, occasionally hit the bike park. It's going to be really sweet for that too.
So what's new with the bike? Visually, I can tell they've changed some stuff with the rear linkage. What's going on there?
Yeah, they've actually done quite a bit with the new Bronson. So like you said, there's a pretty like meaningful tweak to VPP here. I think they've done tweaks in the past that have increased performance, but I think this is like actually quite a big change. The front shock mount bolt is quite different. The whole shock placement is different. We have the big hole right in the middle. This is going to allow you to check your sag a lot easier, which is cool to see. Aside from the rear linkage, we also see frame storage in the Bronson for the first time. The last one did not have it, so this one's going to have the sweet glove box feature that we all know and love. And aside from that, they changed their carbon frames a little bit. So you still have the carbon C, you still have the carbon CC, but the difference now is that the carbon CC is not going to have cable routing for drivetrains, and so it's going to be for electronic drivetrains only.
Wow, that's pretty big news. Some people may not like that at home, but
yeah, controversial, but a little bit of weight savings. Also, yeah, that's really it. Huh?
Yeah, let us know in the comments. What are your thoughts on that? Are you okay with that, or are you a mechanical CC guy and this bike's not going to work for you? Just let us know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the electronic drivetrains have started to take over, but you still see some people rocking even the nicer, like the XL1 mechanical stuff. You see it out there.
Yeah, some people love it.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so you're riding the large behind us. What are the Geo numbers on that bike?
Yeah, so no surprise, it did get longer and slacker. In that size large, in the low position, we're looking at a 478 millimeter reach, a 63.9 degree head tube angle, and a 1268 millimeter wheelbase, along with a 77.9 degree effective seat tube angle. What does all this mean on the trail? I think the reach numbers are actually on the conservative side. I don't think that's crazy over the top by any means. This is pretty typical for Santa Cruz. I feel like they've always had a little bit more conservative reach numbers than other brands, so that's easy to work with. The wheelbase, I feel like, is something that is quite a bit longer than the last bike, so that's going to give you a little bit more downhill stability, which we'll talk about when we get to descending. 77.9 degree effective seat tube angle, nice and steep, and then at 63.9 degrees on the head tube angle, that's actually going to be a decent amount slacker than the last bike, which I think was in the mid 64 range. You know, pretty interesting to see on a bike like this, almost like toting the line between enduro and trail a little bit. I know for my riding preference, I'm pretty happy to see this. I think it just gives you more stability like the wheelbase, and we'll touch on that more later.
Yeah, so with that wheelbase, it comes with a longer rear triangle, but it is size specific as well.
Size specific, yeah, and then Santa Cruz also likes to point out that they make the chainstays longer on the mixed wheel bikes particularly, because that works better with the geometry that having mixed wheel sizes just kind of produces. It might be surprising if you're looking at the Geo chart comparing this bike to the High Tower, for example. It might look like a really long chainstay. I will say, I think the mixed wheel bikes do a great job of still retaining a lot of playfulness even with a super long chainstay, so don't be alarmed by those numbers.
Yeah, that's good to know.
While we're on the topic of sizing, I think it's interesting to point out that this bike now comes in a double extra large. Previously it did not, and so the size run goes from a small all the way through that double XL.
All right, it's good to know for those tall riders. So what are our build kit options for this bike?
So this is going to come in 5 different builds. We have the top spec build behind us. This is the XO Axis Reserve build. Pretty interesting build, I thought, actually, from Santa Cruz here. So it features air shock in the rear. We have the Float X, and then we have the 36 fork up front. But we have SRAM Maven brakes, so pretty burly, kind of more enduro style brakes. Along with those reserve wheels are going to be the enduro spec wheel. A nice mix, I think, of like weight savings, and then you have some certain components that give you a little bit more capability. I also really like the tire spec on this bike. We're going to have that DHR2 mixed with the Assegai, which is like that's kind of like my go-to, and it is a pretty I'd say a more enduro tire combo, but is going to really work well in steep terrain.
Yeah, and I really like the one-up dropper, the V3. It's super serviceable at home and just super reliable and lightweight.
Yeah, that's the post I hope to see on my builds these days. I really like it. Let's see what else. We have the SRAM XO drivetrain transmission, runs awesome. And then they actually spec the different paddle on this bike. They don't have the buttons. It comes with the actual paddle, almost reminiscent of the Gen 1 Axis.
The new rocker.
Yeah, the new rocker, exactly. Nice. And yeah, those are kind of the key points. I think it rides like with a great balance of like being reactive, but like for jumping and like cornering, being playful. But then when you need to just like stick it to the ground and track, it can do that too.
What colors does this come in?
So behind us we have the root beer. It's a pretty sweet brown. It shines really well in the sunlight. It may not do it justice in here. And then it's also going to come in a Kalimoto pink. That's really cool, and I am excited to see that one in person.
The pink one is what I got my eyes on for sure.
Yeah, a little bit of pink and yellow, nice and hot.
Yeah, that one just makes me thirsty. Can you imagine on a ride, you just look down, you're thinking of root beer on a ride?
Doesn't even come with ice cream.
Yeah, not cool. So it's time to talk about how this bike rides. You got a little bit of time on it today. Let us know, how does it climb?
So I really like the way Santa Cruz is climbing in general, although I definitely think this Bronson like kind of takes a change for the better. Anti-squat I felt like was really noticeable. They reduced the anti-squat in this bike, and I know that doesn't really mean a lot on paper, but on the trail I really thought that it did a really good job staying high in the travel on the climbs, tracked really well over rocks and stuff, whether you're standing or sitting. Like I thought just the movement of the rear wheel was very predictable in that kind of scenario. And then I think it also helped on the descents, but we'll get into that a little bit more later.
Nice.
But yeah, like I said, it's a really sweet travel spot, I think, for someone who wants a lot of downhill capability, but pedals a lot as well. It pedals similarly to more like tried and true mid-travel bikes, closer to like that 130, 140 range. And you get just that little bit of extra bump without really much penalty on the uphill, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, it sounds pretty nice. So it climbs well. Does it have a lockout on the rear?
Yeah, it has a switch. I think the switch is in a spot that you could get to it without stopping, which is always nice to see. This is definitely a bike that I think has a pretty sprightly feel, and I probably would only rely on that climb switch on like fire roads and asphalt and stuff like that. The position of the bike I think is nice. I think it's worth pointing out that with a mixed wheel bike, your climbing position is going to be slightly different than with a 29-inch bike. So if you're trying a mixed wheel bike for the first time, you might have to like play with your saddle position a little bit more. Obviously, just like having the higher front end from the 2 different size wheels is an adjustment. That being said, I really don't think it's like a worse thing. It's just different. Yeah.
What about with the little bit slacker head tube angle? Does it feel like the front floats around a lot on the climbs, or not too bad?
I didn't really notice that it was bad on this one. With this being a size large and me being 6'4", I think it was pretty small for me, so it was easier for me to keep that in check. But I also felt like it was comfortable to climb, even though I like maybe sized down a little bit. So that's also a benefit. I think sometimes when I swing a leg over a large bike, I'm worried about like my knees crunching up and it being an uncomfortable cockpit position, and that wasn't the case here. I think that's one of the benefits of bikes getting longer and slacker, is if you want to size down, it can be pretty comfortable.
Okay. So that gets us to the descending part. That's really where this bike shines. That's what it's made for. Did you really notice the difference with the shock being in a different location than the previous model, or how does that feel?
Yeah, I think the tweaks to VPP here are pretty noticeable on the descents, more so than the climbs, I think especially. I noticed with that reduced anti-squat, I felt like the bike just sits a little bit deeper in the travel, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think with this bike it works really well. I think there are plenty of other features on the bike that help retain playfulness and poppiness, making this like not really a bad thing. I really noticed it on like really chunky rock gardens. The bike really does a great job of like sticking the rear wheel to the ground when you want it to, and then it can still break free and break traction, get off the ground really easily if you're looking to do that. So I think they have a great balance here. But yeah, even compared to like my Mega Tower, which was the last Santa Cruz that I spent like a decent amount of time on, I was really impressed with how the bike tracks, and I think it's definitely chalked up to this new VPP design, especially because this bike actually has less travel than that one did.
Yeah. So they claim a lot about like less pedal kickback. Did you get an opportunity to feel for that, or did you not really pick up on it?
Yeah, I did notice that a little bit. I think compared to the old Mega Tower, it probably did it a little bit. It probably handles the pedal kickback issue a little bit better. We rode some rock gardens today, and I was kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. Like, cocked my ankles and was waiting to see if there was much of an impact. But I found as long as you're picking the right line, I found the bike handled it really well. I didn't notice any big impacts, any pedal feedback throwing me off my line. The bike descended super quietly, and it felt very calm. And I'm attributing this to the tweak in the VPP design. I think they did a great job, and I'm excited to spend some more time on it.
Yeah. Speaking of the quietness of it, I don't know if you noticed on the chainstay there, that rubber protector, that thing's got a lot of dampening. So you're not gonna hear any chain slap, right?
Yeah, the fins get pretty big on that thing, and there was absolutely no chain slap, and I think that's one of the best parts of riding a Santa Cruz, and something that they continue to improve on over the years. The bike is so satisfying to ride right out of the box. I think there are plenty of other brands out there where you kind of expect your first ride to be more of a shakedown, where you're going to have loose pivot bolts, your shock mount bolts might come loose, the cockpit might be a bit of a nightmare. I don't want to sandbag. But truly with a Santa Cruz, it comes out of the box so dialed in and ready to go. This thing was absolutely silent, nothing came loose. It just feels like they took that little bit of extra time to make sure everything is functioning properly, and it shows.
Yeah. All right, so this bike is designed to be fun, playful. How does it do on the jumps, the berms, things like that?
It definitely shines in that setting, I think. The mixed wheel design is always going to be a benefit, at least for me in this kind of scenario. I really like the way that platform does in more playful terrain. It was super fun to jump, and I think it attributes largely to the wheel size in the Geo. Being a little bit more stable and relaxed, it definitely allows you to just kind of focus on the features and not worry about braking traction. It tracks really well, and so you can kind of just go as fast as you want into features and feel pretty good about it. I think it's always worth noting with a mid-travel bike, you may have to spend a little bit more time on suspension setup to get the bike jumping exactly how you want to, especially if you're going to be possibly overshooting something. It definitely helps to make sure you have that bottom out resistance that you need in that setting. But once you have your suspension set up properly, I think it's a great jumper.
Nice.
And along with good jumping performance often comes good cornering performance, and this is definitely the case. I think there are a lot of contributors there. The wheel size, again, is going to be big here. I think the tire combo is super dialed if you like to corner hard, lots of traction. And I think that maybe a little bit more middle of the road reach number also can help. It just helps stay stable and push through without getting lost in the cockpit, to say. So I think that's another benefit there. Great Schrauber, 10 out of 10.
So who's this bike for?
I think the Bronson could fit for a lot of different people. I think it's worth noting that this is one of our best selling bikes, and so I think that is for good reason. People seem to love the Bronson and have for a long time. But I think the Bronson works really well maybe for the aspiring rider, for the more beginner intermediate, if you're ready to kind of invest and get something that's going to allow you to progress. I really don't think there's much that you can't ride with this bike.
Yeah. That's what Santa Cruz says. It's their best all-arounder.
Yeah, I'd feel pretty comfortable with this bike sending it into even the most technical things at the bike park. It's probably not, I probably would be riding a little bit more cautiously there than I would with something longer travel, but I definitely think you can do it and do it well.
Yeah.
It's definitely a confidence-inspiring machine, and I think the balance between its descending capabilities and then the way it pedals is pretty astonishing. I don't think there's a lot of other bikes that can really do everything this well. That being said, I think with it being mixed wheel, being on the longer travel end of the trail bike category, it is going to work best in areas with some amount of access to steeper terrain. It definitely could be slightly overkill for a flatter area Maybe even something like Moab, where it's just like, you know, traversing and really rocky and chunky. You might want something a little bit,
Like a 50-10.
a little bit tighter, yeah, just a little bit tighter geometry. And I think this bike is definitely for the mixed wheel enthusiast. I mean, this is one of the first dedicated mixed wheel bikes that we saw. The Bronson V4 was, and now it's been refined even more. Santa Cruz has been doing the mixed wheel thing for a long time. Yeah. So if you already know that that's something that you like, the Bronson could definitely be for you.
Yeah, and if you're curious, also could be for you.
Yeah.
All right, there's one thing we gotta do. We gotta weigh it.
Yes, I am actually pretty curious to see what it weighs in at, being a top spec build and all. Should we take the pedals off?
Sure.
Yeah, the big chunky pedals.
Yeah, big chunky pedals.
We'll take the chunky pedals off.
Yeah. What's your guess? Size large, no pedals.
Size large, no pedals.
XO, reserve.
Nothing in the frame storage, it's empty in there. Oh boy, I'm gonna say, I'm nervous. I'm gonna say 32 pounds flat.
All right, so we got EXO Plus in the front. I don't know about the rear. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna go
EXO Plus.
33.
Okay, we'll see who's right. Here's our moment.
Oh, 33 pounds, 2 ounces.
Wow, great guess, Jono.
Looks like someone's better.
You haven't beat me in a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
14.9 in kgs, now we know.
Not bad.
That's a wrap on our first impressions for the new Bronson V5. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, if you have any further questions about this bike, you can reach out to our Gearheads. They can help answer any of those questions. If you want to do custom build, they can look into that, help you out there. And yeah, we'll see you out in the trails.
You.